Welcome back. We are back on the bench with the JCM2000 dual super lead that has the new circuit board from Brad's Guitar Garage in there. We left off with this thing getting hooked up, powered up with old tubes on the current limiter just to make sure there were no short circuits or anything. So yeah, I think next step is going to be to power it up on full power, no tubes installed. Double check the voltages throughout the amp, make sure everything's looking good, and then I'll throw a either new set of EL34s and 12AX7s, or I might have a set that came out of another amp, an older amp that's still good, just for the purposes of what this amp is going to be used for. But either way, we'll throw some tubes in there, bias it up, get everything checked out. Maybe do a quick sound test and then save a full sound test for the new sound check Saturdays. Going to be doing amp demos on Saturdays from now on. Okay, so yeah, let's fire this thing up, see what happens. I'll show you how to test some voltages, see that we're within the bounds of what we're expecting on this amp with this new beautiful circuit board. Okay, so we've got the voltmeter set up, DC volts. I've got my ground probe kind of out of sight here, but it's on the chassis. Just connecting to that. Got my red probe for the positive side. Hooked up to the attenuator as a dummy load. And although, honestly, so this may be controversial, but you don't technically need to be hooked up to a load with a tube amplifier if you aren't sending signal through the amp. Now, although that's technically the truth, I have my load right here, so why risk it, right? May as well just hook it up. It's not going to hurt anything by being hooked up, and it ensures that nothing is hurt if for some reason some signal somehow gets through, which there's no way that would happen with no tubes in the amp. Nothing hooked up to the input, but here we are. Why not be precautious? Why not wear your seatbelt, I guess? Okay, so I'm going to power up here. And now with no tubes in the amp, our voltages will be slightly higher, just like they're slightly lower on the current limiter. With no load on a power supply, your voltage is a little bit higher than it otherwise would be, because there's nothing drawing current and then dragging the power supply down to an operating point that it's used to. There's probably a more technical way to explain that, but the easy way to think about it is there's no pull on it. And so I guess, yeah, no current being drawn means it's going to have more potential available. Okay, but enough of that. Let's dive into it. Volts DC, let's go ahead and see what's going on our power tubes. Okay, there's our bias, -42. And it's not slowly creeping up because this is a well-built board without design flaws. Okay, 526, which again, that's a little bit higher than it will be once we get tubes in. 527, so that's going across probably our screen. I am terrible at memorizing the pins of tubes, but I know about what they should read typically. Okay, 527. What's this guy? 528. Okay, so that's good. Just kind of wander in there for a sec. Make sure this isn't loose. Okay. Here we go. Seeing what I expect. And nothing I wouldn't expect. 528. What did we get here? 527. All good. Good bias once again. And again, it's, look at that, nice and stable. Love to see it. Thank you, Brad's Guitar Garage. And again, this is a funny situation because I have several other amps I will reach for before this amp. I have several other Marshalls I will reach for before playing this amp, but I'm still very excited to have this up and running again. Okay, so now we're on the preamp tubes. I actually have a, we'll go ahead and move this over here. A 1973 Lead 50 that is my go-to Marshall these days. Okay, 518, that's good. And again, way higher than it will be once we are actually connected. What's this other plate? 523, okay. Pin 6. And I actually like that Lead 50 to the point that I was strongly considering selling my JCM2000 2204 because I just don't play it anymore with the Lead 50. But that also feels kind of crazy to do since I know I will never buy a JCM800 again at the prices they are now going for. I was lucky enough to get the one that I have for about $1,000 before they shot in price. It's pretty banged up, but still runs really well. Okay, things are looking good. Voltages all check out. So again, I was just looking to see that we have plate voltages on the pin that we should, that we have bias on the power tube pins that we should, and it looks like it's within a reasonable value. At this point, it's going to be time. Yeah, and that bias is still stable. Okay, so it's time to go ahead and tighten down the stuff on the back that is holding this board in place. I did it like finger tight just to get things in here. Going to throw some fresh tubes in, and we'll let this thing sit and kind of just monitor the bias. I'm sure it's going to be good, but I've been burned by these amps before. So, in fact, twice with the two that I have, plus others that I've worked on. So we're going to kind of babysit it for a little bit. I'm not going to run the video for that. I'll just report back. This might be a kind of quick video because it looks like everything's great. There's nothing else to do except for power it up with tubes, get a little sound out of it, see how it goes. All right, so let's do that real quick. Okay, so we have a set of EL34s, 12AX7s, JJs across the board. These are tubes from one of my old amps from when I was playing a lot more, and would retube pretty frequently as a way to keep things fresh for recording and playing shows. Put all these on the tube tester, they all test good. So this should be a good set for what I need this amp for. We're going to power this thing up. I've got the CompuBias hooked up, although this is one of those amps where right here, I'll show you a little close-up view. There are 3 pins and then adjustment screws on either side, and usually they basically give you a test voltage. So there's a common, I believe, probably in the middle, and then you can test the voltage on either side. And that's how you can adjust the bias on these amps without opening things up. So what we'll probably do here, just for reference, is bias things with the CompuBias because this is something I trust and use for all my other amps. But then we'll check what that voltage is on these back pins, just as a reference point for anybody else that's out there wanting to do this on their own. Okay, so tubes have been tested. Typically in a situation like this, I would put the tubes in, fire it up on the current limiter first, just in case a tube was shorted. But I have been using the tube tester lately as a way to kind of bypass that step and replace it with another one. Let's see what happens. We'll power on here. Power is on. I'm going to go ahead and take it off standby. And again, we're going to see our plate voltage come up, and then the current rise and the wattage will be there. If that wattage goes to anything above this 18 watt range, or looks like it's going to rise above that, I'm going to kill the power to the amp immediately. Okay, well within range. Okay, and I believe we have the ability to bias these sides independently on this amp. Let's see what these screws actually do. Or if I can even find them without turning the amp around. Let's see. Okay, here's one side. Yep, and that's that side there. So I'm going to shoot for around 15 watts on each side, right in the middle of that range. 15.4, that's not too bad. Let's go to the other side. Bring this up. Okay, 15.3. Let's see if we can get those the same. Sometimes with these kind of circuits, as you adjust one side, the other side will start to change as well. That's pretty dang good right there. Okay. Just for fun, let's see what our voltages are on those pins. Let me see if I can get this somewhere we can see. So I'll go black probe on the middle. Okay, 0.67. Now, if it's the same on the other side, we'll know. Yeah, okay. So yeah, if you have one of these and you don't want to open it up, but you want to check your bias, put your black probe on the center pin and red probe with volts DC on the two outside pins. And 0.067 is a nice safe range. That's well within the range on EL34. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to kind of babysit this, and assuming everything's okay, we'll do a quick little sound test, not a full-on sound test in the studio, but just enough to see if there's any other issues with the amp. It's kind of interesting, I'm not hearing anything at all coming out of the attenuator. So there may be other issues with this amp. These buttons are real sticky. There's a very solid chance I spilled a beer on this amp at some point, I'm not going to lie. Okay, so I'm going to let this sit for a little bit, make sure the bias is stable, and then we'll come back. Okay, so the bias checked out, seemed nice and stable. We have a nice clean tone here. Surprising lack of needing to clean the volume pots. There's our crunch mode. Let's switch to the ultra gain. Now we are going through my attenuator, so I imagine that would be screaming loud. A little bit louder. No reverb control because the tank's not hooked up over here. Tone shift button, deep button. Okay, I'm honestly kind of blown away because again, this amp was pretty heavily abused. This was my main amp when I was playing at bars where we would get like, 20 free beers each for the night for playing for like an hour or so. So this thing really was going through its paces, and then I put it on shelf for like 15 years and have not touched it because it started to have the bias drift issue. Shortly after that, I got a decent job and bought my first two like real amps, in my opinion, which were a 1965 Fender Bandmaster and a mid 70s Ampeg V4, and then kind of never looked back from those. So yeah, this is great. This thing's running great. Putting the new power board in there really just eliminates the potential for any issues with the tube sockets or anything needing to be cleaned. I kept thinking, oh, I should clean the tube sockets because I probably spilled a beer on this at some point, but they're new. I don't have to worry about that. I didn't just have to do like drill out a hole for the bias issue. I have a whole new board. This is amazing. Okay, I'll stop blabbing about that. I'm just very happy with this and how it worked out. So I'm going to call it there. We'll do a full-on sound test of this amp for a later date. But for now, we're just going to call this good. This thing's ready to go back in the head shell, and I'll put it on the stack of other Marshalls for the studio. All right. Thanks for watching, as always, and hope you're having a great evening.